Find the shad, find the bass. This is one of the most common pieces of bass fishing advice out there, but it doesn't always hold true. While finding shad on your fish finder or visually can be a great indicator that bass are in an area, it doesn't always mean that areas without shad won't have bass. Bass like to feed on other types of forage like crawfish, gobies, or sculpin that live in rocks and are impossible to see on a fish finder. The reason for this is that all of these forage types live tight to the bottom, usually around rocks, and aren't suspended in the middle of the water column where they can be seen easily with your fish finder. As a result, you can graph over a great rock pile and not see any forage in there or any bass because the bass and the forage are so tight to the bottom. This leads a lot of anglers to ignore a lot of great rocky spots on the lake that are holding bass just because they can't see any shad in the area. Now, not every single rocky spot you graph on side scan or down scan is going to be holding fish, and in general, the majority of the rock you graph is not going to have fish. But I do have a pretty good rule of thumb for identifying the best rocky stretches and rocky spots using my fish finder as well as process of elimination, and I'm going to get into it in this video. Let's get into it. The first step in finding bass around offshore rock is finding isolated rocks that look different from the other rocks in the area. This can either be a very big boulder that sticks out obvious from all the other smaller rocks in the area, or an isolated patch of chunk rock surrounded by smoother bottom. If you find an area that's just covered up with rock in all directions, you're usually not going to find bass very easily because there's so much water to cover. Instead, you want to find these smaller isolated targets that are the size of the front deck of your boat, or maybe the size of your boat at the most. These areas can be fished very effectively, and you can target them with 3 to 5 casts and determine quickly if bass are in the area. Now, just because you find one of these isolated rocks doesn't mean it's going to hold bass. And the next step in the process is trying to fish different isolated rocks or rocky patches in different depth zones. I usually try to fish rock piles in 5 foot, 10 foot, 15 foot, 20 feet, all the way down to 40 or 50 feet until I start getting bit. A lot of times you'll find that the majority of the bass on your lake are going to be in a 10-foot depth zone range. So they'll be in rock piles from, let's say, 10 to 20 foot, or 20 to 30 foot, or 10 feet or less. As a result, you need to run a lot of different rock piles in different depths to determine which ones the bass are holding in. This also means you need to find a lot of these isolated areas, and the way I do that is by graphing with the side scan view on my fish finder. I spend a lot of time graphing down rounded points, offshore flats, really any type of offshore structure looking for these isolated rocky spots, and I might spend 2 to 3 hours of my fishing day just graphing to find these spots. But once you find them, all you need to do is drop a waypoint on them, fire over there, and try to make 3 to 5 casts in that area. If there's a fish around one of those isolated boulders or rock piles, usually it's going to bite within your first few casts. I took this strategy to Beaver Lake recently when I was struggling to find a lot of shad out in the middle of the lake and started running some bigger isolated boulders in shallow water and immediately started catching some fish. Got him. Feels like a decent one now. First fish I caught out of here was an absolute runt. It's a pretty good one on a crankbait. Just found a little rocky spot here that had a bunch of fish stacked up on it. And actually got a pretty decent spotted bass right there on a crankbait. That's a nice keeper right there. Beautiful fish. Got him on that mega bass. This is the Deep X200 LBO. There we go, beautiful fish on that medium diving crankbait. Gotta love a crankbait bite when it's cold and windy and nasty outside. After catching a nice fish out of that isolated boulder, I wanted to replicate this pattern, and there's 2 ways you can go about this. One, again, is graphing with your fish finder, but another is actually trying to visually identify pockets that have bigger boulders in them. You can do this by running through the lake and actually looking for big boulders on the shoreline. Then you can pull into those pockets, and a lot of times you can even just see boulders that are sticking out into the water, and that's what I did on this next spot. I just visually saw some big boulders right up against the bank and started throwing the swim bait up there, and I connected with another fish. There we go. What is this? Working our way up to a rocky spot. Got a good one on. What in the world do I got? Feels like a big old smallmouth if it's anything. Get on up here. Oh yeah. Nice smallie. Fishing my way up to a rocky spot with a little swim bait here. He absolutely choked that thing. Oh, beautiful smallmouth on that finesse tush right there. Absolutely gorgeous. 1/4 ounce finesse tush in a 3.3 little Big Bite Baits Pro swimmer. Choke that thing. That is a nice smallie. Just working these rock piles, guys. Graphed up another set of them, and there's a little bit less wind here, so I thought that I'd just throw around that swim bait. Wasn't even looking at my forward facing on that one, just firing at my waypoints, and that fish absolutely ate it. Beautiful fish. Oh, beautiful smallie. Let's get him back down there. Really quick, I want to let you know about a new seminar I posted on fishthemoment.com. This seminar is focused on finding patterns that forward-facing sonar anglers are missing. If you only have traditional 2D sonar, down scan, or side scan, and want to regain an advantage over all those scopers out there, this is the seminar for you. I'm going to be sharing patterns that are very hard to replicate with forward-facing sonar and show you on a lot of different lake types how to implement these patterns that catch big 5 bass limits, whether you're fun fishing or in tournaments. This seminar is happening on Friday, February 7th. You can participate live during the seminar, and you'll also receive a recording of the entire seminar afterwards that'll be emailed to you. Definitely check it out at fishthemoment.com. After fishing the rest of these boulders and getting a couple of fish to nip at my bait, I decided to change areas and used my side scan to identify another big boulder. One thing about these areas is they're all in less than 8 feet of water. There's a lot of other rock that was deeper, and I feel like some of it was holding fish, but the fish were a lot smaller than the fish that I was catching. It seemed like the better quality fish, the 2.5+ pounders, were sitting in the bigger boulders in less than 8 feet of water. And I couldn't see these fish on forward-facing sonar or on my side scan view. I basically just had to mark the area, pull up there, and cast to see if fish were there. And I would usually get bit on 1 out of every 3 to 5 of these boulders I would fish. Got him. There he is off that rock pile. Oh, it's a good one too. Good fish. My gosh, guys. I had one follow it. That rock pile's in like 5 foot of water. Threw that swim bait over the top like 6 times. That's a freaking big largemouth out here on Beaver, guys. Absolutely choked the finesse tush. Oh, look how he ate that thing. That is a big largemouth out here on Beaver, guys. He absolutely inhaled that finesse tush down the throat. Oh, it's a 3.5 pounder. We have a bag working today, guys. This is a freaking tournament pattern. It took 17 pounds for 6 fish to get second place last week. One of the local guys who's really good out here caught 22 pounds for 6 fish, which is like insane. But if you have 5 of these, you are absolutely in contention to win tournaments out here, if not at least finish in the top 5. And all 3 of the fish we've caught today have been really good ones, but that is a super nice largemouth, and we are dialed in now, only like a couple hours into the day. Beautiful fish right there. Let's get him back down in the lake. Okay, now let me show you a few of my favorite baits for fishing shallow rock piles. We had a lot of wind today and cloud cover, and usually in those situations, I like to throw a crankbait as long as you have less than 4 foot of water visibility. A crankbait comes through those rocks really well, allows you to cover water and get reaction strikes from those fish. The 2 crankbaits I pick up most often are a Spro Rock Crawler 55 and the Megabass Deep X200 LBO. The LBO from Megabass casts a lot better in the wind. Because we had like 30-mile-an-hour gusts today, I was throwing that Megabass Deep X200 more often today just because of the wind, but I'll also throw that Spro Rock Crawler if the wind isn't as bad. If I really feel like the fish are keyed in specifically on crawfish, the Rock Crawler is also a really good option, has great color patterns there. But the LBO has some craw patterns too, but I also like to throw these more like clear green gizzard shad colors sometimes if the fish are feeding on shad. I pair both these crankbaits on 12-pound fluorocarbon line with a 7-foot medium power, moderate action crankbait rod. I also throw some deeper diving crankbaits if you get rock piles that are in like 15-ish feet of water, maybe 10 to 15 feet. The one I had tied on today is just this Spro Outsider 80, but I also throw striking 5XDs, 6XDs, the Megabass Deep 6, Deep 3, Megabass Deep X300. There's a bunch of crankbaits I like to throw, and I just always experiment around based on kind of a bunch of different factors, whether it's castability of the crankbait, the colors, things like that. But usually I just need to pick a crankbait that gets to the right depth. That's the most important thing. And as long as you're getting that crankbait digging in the rocks, you're usually going to get bites. The actual crankbait itself isn't always the most important thing. I just like to experiment with different baits. Now, if we get some sunny skies like this or clear water, that's when I'll go to a swim bait instead of a crankbait for my reaction bite. We still have some good wind right now, but the sun popped out and we got into an area of the lake that had like 5 foot of visibility. And that's why I went to this little 3.3 Big Bite Baits Pro Swimmer on the Core Tackle 1/4 ounce 2/0 finesse tush. I love this finesse tush. It hides all that weight inside that swim bait like that, and the fish absolutely crush it. The reason I'm throwing that Big Bite Baits Pro Swimmer is it has a little bit stiffer plastic than the standard Kitech, and I find that rigs better on this finesse tush, and it also just holds the bait on extremely well. I caught all my fish on this one bait today. I've caught like 7 or 8 on it so far, and it holds up super well. The hook holds the bait on well, and it gives those fish a unique action to that swim bait and that unique profile without the jig head that really does catch a lot of fish for me. Again, clear water, more sunny days, but there's still some wind. That's when I go to the swim bait. And I'm just pairing that with some 15-pound braided line for my main line, and then a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. And I use basically about 2 rod lengths for my leader, or a little bit more. I probably need to retie that braid right there. It's getting a little bit chewed up. That does not look good, but we'll fix that later. And I do like to throw my finesse tush on a pretty specific rod. This is actually a walleye rod. It's a Denali Myriad. It's a 7-foot medium power, moderate action spinning rod. And it has a really nice tip to it. It allows those fish to get the bait in their mouth a little bit better. And I always find that I get better hookups with this specific setup, and those fish will eat the bait deeper into their mouth. And you saw a couple of those fish absolutely choke this thing later this afternoon. I'll pair that with the Denali Fission Pro spinning reel, and we're good to go. The last bait I'll throw is when you have sunny skies and no winds, those calm days. That's when I like to go to a football jig. I'll throw my Fishbone offshore jig in some type of green pumpkin or craw-ish color usually, and just pair that with any sort of trailer. I like this Big Bite Baits College Craw, but there's a bunch of other trailers you can try. And if the fish are really, really picky, I may go down to like a Ned rig at times, though I find that if there's a quality fish, like a 3+ pounder in the area, they'll eat the jig just as well as they will the little smaller baits. So I'm not super picky about that, but there are days when I do find that I get more bites on a Ned rig, a shaky head, something like that. So I will switch to that if the fishing gets extremely tough, post-frontal, things like that. But usually a jig can get the job done. I'm just pairing that with some 16-pound fluorocarbon with this is a Max Pro Abu Garcia reel. I don't know, I picked it up at Walmart. It's a little bit nicer. It allows me to skip. It's better than my Black Maxes. They're all like 7 years old that don't skip as well. And I'm just pairing that with a Denali Lithium Pro 7-foot heavy power fast action bait casting rod. So those are all the baits I like to throw with these rock pile deals. There's other baits you can throw, obviously, if you wanted to throw like a bigger swim bait like a Megabass Mag Draft or glide baits. There's other things you can throw. This is just what I throw, and it seems to get me a lot of consistency and a lot of good bites. And I find that throwing those bigger baits or throwing just different things don't really improve my success all that much. So this is kind of what I landed on over years and years of doing this.
And that's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed, leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite tip from this video was. Also subscribe to the Fish the Moment YouTube channel for more content like this. See you in the next video.